How many Mr. Pickles will it get? Let's see if this cabinet has what it takes.
Video Game Vegas.
He's so cute.
Friends, Video Game Vegas. And this is my review of the Arcade1Up first iteration Atari Star Wars Arcade Cabinet, the stand-up SKU edition. I base my arcade cabinet reviews on 10 categories, which you'll find detailed in the text below. For each positive in a category, or more positive than negative in a category, I'll score it a Mr. Pickle. The more Mr. Pickles it gets, of course, the better. Based upon the total score, and my overall thoughts, I'll recommend if you should get it, vet it, or in other words, put it through its paces in person before you buy, or forget it. A couple of disclaimers before I get into my review. All my product reviews are based solely upon the item or items I receive. Some may get the same product and have no issues. Some may have more issues than I did. And maybe I get no issues at all, my hope for any product. Or maybe a majority of the specific product performs or presents differently than the one I got. But when it comes down to it, what I get is what I review. I don't acquiesce to excuses like, I must have gotten a bad one, or a good one, or ruminate shipping issues if I had it shipped, though I may note something. But plainly put, I'm an advocate for good quality with a strong emphasis towards quality control. And if a company wants their product seen favorably, then they need to make this a paramount part of their philosophy and put it to action, so what every customer receives is an acceptable, if not preferred, exceptional experience every time. Some may think it unfair not to put a more significant emphasis on the law of averages, and I appreciate that opinion. But my reviews are meant to tell my experience on exactly what I got, good or bad. Second, the footage presented in my videos of arcade cabinets I review or showcase may contain updated parts, decorations, software, or other bits and bobs not included in a standard purchase. Please make sure to check advertised listings or reach out to retailers or companies to confirm complete contents in box. Now let's get to it. There have been many wow moments throughout my arcade journeys, usually involving the discovery of a new game. Space Invaders, Berserk, Pac-Man, just to name a few. But one machine in particular will always stand out for me, and that's Atari's Star Wars. I'll never forget the first time I saw this machine. I was at a theater to see Return of the Jedi for the umpteenth time, and right there, in the middle of the lobby, there it was. A beautiful, sit-down, cockpit cabinet, emblazoned with amazing Star Wars artwork, pumping sounds from the motion picture. I immediately jumped out of line, which I never did, just to get a closer look. I was instantly entranced with the X-Wing fighting off TIE fighters with the Death Star in the background. But when the scene changed to flying down the Death Star trench, I truly lost it. It was a dream come true. One of the greatest movie moments of all time, faithfully recreated in video game form right before my eyes. Now there had been other games in the past that tried to replicate that trench feeling before. Starhawk and Tunnel Hunt come to mind, but it always felt like something was missing. Heck, I even imagined Midway's Defender was an X-Wing in flight. But nothing could have prepared me for Atari Star Wars. I remember wanting to skip the movie to play it, but Return of the Jedi was a great film, and I wanted to see it again. Please note, I was seeing the original Return of the Jedi, not the special edition crap George Lucas shat out later. During the film, all I could think about was that amazing Star Wars machine sitting out in the lobby, waiting for me to save the galaxy with the quarter in my pocket. Almost every moment of the film seemed excruciatingly long, as visions of the first Death Star battle danced in my head. As soon as the credits rolled, I jumped out of my seat, only to be met with a throng of people leaving the theater. It took what seemed like forever for me to make it back to the lobby. To my utter dismay, there was now a huge line out the door, not to see the movie, but to play this new game. You better believe, though, I stood in that long line, and what I believe was hours later, was sitting in the cockpit, young Vegas Skywalker, ready to take on the Empire. I remember destroying the Death Star 2 times that day, incredibly impressed by how the game played. Little did I know at the time, Atari Star Wars would become, and remain to this day, my favorite arcade game of all time. When Arcade1Up first came onto the scene, they encouraged the community to submit new ideas for upcoming arcade cabinets they'd like to see. The first one I suggested, of course, was Atari Star Wars. I let them know it needed to have an actual yoke controller, just like the one in the arcade, so everything would feel and play right. It also needed to include all 3 games in the arcade trilogy, since they all use the same control scheme. Star Wars, of course, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. Then one exciting day, at a large electronic game show event called E3, Arcade1Up unveiled their Atari Star Wars cabinet, replete with everything that I mentioned. And though it would be cool to take credit for planting the seed for this fantastic recreation, I'd have a hard time believing I was the only one requesting this exact setup. Thank you to everyone who put this bug into Arcade1Up's ear. Now, the unveiling was bittersweet to me. I was excited for sure, out of my mind elated at first. But I quickly ramped down my expectations as my mind crept back to my previous, less than stellar experience with Arcade1Up products. I wondered where Arcade1Up would cut corners this time, and in what creative ways my new hopes would be dashed. I even shook myself out of a daymare, where I envisioned Arcade1Up slapping a static piece of plastic in the shape of a yoke onto one of their standard 8-way joysticks and calling it a day. The horror. I would be standing firm this time though, and not letting the fact that this was my favorite arcade game of all time cloud my judgment. I would only buy another cabinet from Arcade1Up if it received a majority of positive feedback and didn't have any glaring problems I couldn't live with. Thankfully, Arcade1Up allowed people to get their hands on the machine before it went on sale, some even people I trusted from the community. Great things were being said all around, like the yoke controller felt just like it did in the arcade, and that the gameplay was spot on. Nary a negative word was said, and it gave me the confidence to give Arcade1Up another shot. Plus, Glenn, from Glenn's Retro Show, had my back. I purchased his version of the yoke controller from his Kickstarter campaign, and it would be compatible with Arcade1Up's new machine. But would it be necessary? Would Arcade1Up burn me again? Here's the skinny. The look of the cabinet. Now, this cabinet is not the cockpit version I first played of Atari Star Wars. It's a stand-up version, which I have absolutely no issue with since I've enjoyed so many Star Wars sessions on commercial stand-up editions. The cabinet shape was not in Arcade1Up's usual at the time generic design, but something new to mimic the commercial arcade machine's original shape. And it's a beauty. The artwork, riser, and light-up marquee are all fantastic, making it an amazing looker. And I'm very happy to say, not a ding or scratch on it. And it's crazy, since the box it shipped in was beat to hell. Arcade1Up must have gotten the memo and started packing everything more secure inside so there would be no damage in case of bad shipping mishaps. cabinet structure and assembly. Though this cabinet has an upgraded design language, Arcade1Up's brilliant 3/4 scale construction remains. Like their other cabinets in this form factor, lighter materials, but the right materials, are used to make the whole structure very sturdy. This cabinet also has the same great two-piece design, a main cabinet and a separate riser to make it taller, while also making it easier to move and situate. Unfortunately, the frustration of putting the thing together is crap. This is the second Arcade1Up cabinet I put together by myself, and it was every bit as frustrating as the previous one. Well, maybe not the riser so much, but the main cabinet was. A nightmare of minuscule wooden dowels, awkwardly connecting flopping pieces of material. Putting an Arcade1Up together is like having to watch The Phantom Menace. Please, Arcade1Up, make this a better experience. Physical controls. Wow. Just wow. The reports of the yoke's awesomeness weren't exaggerated in the least. It was industrial, where all the movements felt right, and it felt very sturdy in the hands, like it would last a long, long time. It was light, and though not made from the same materials as a commercial arcade machine, felt impossibly the same. And holding the controller for the first time, and every time, was simply magic. I could not ask for more. Picture quality. Unlike Arcade1Up's Atari Deluxe 12-in-1 cabinet, on the Star Wars machine, space is indeed black. What a great monitor. And not only that, there are graphical options that allow you to tweak the display to mimic an arcade CRT. These aren't perfect, mind you, but so great to see these options available. Great work, Arcade1Up. Sound. Amazing quality here as well. Perfect to the arcade. Games and gameplay. All three games included, Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, all play as you remember them from the arcade. This cabinet is a huge triumph. And it's also a cabinet I don't fault for having a smaller game library. For those who have watched some of my previous content, know that the number of games on a cabinet is an important value factor to me. For cabinets with control schemes that can handle more games and play them as they were in the arcade, I expect a robust number of titles on the cabinet. For cabinets with unique control schemes, only meant to play a specific set of games, I don't mind seeing less. I personally don't find value in adding more games if they need to be Frankensteined into control methods that don't make sense, don't feel right, or are foreign to the way they played in the arcade. The yoke on this cabinet was created specifically to play the Atari Star Wars arcade trilogy, so no additional games are necessary. Sure, the yoke controller can be used to play other games, but not in the scheme accurate to arcade play, at least as far as I can recall. So Arcade1Up's decision to build in what they did gives full value in the games department. This is also the first Arcade1Up cabinet I bought that allowed you to tweak game settings like difficulty and such. A huge win for dip switch setting jockeys and for those who remember playing a machine with different settings than Arcade1Up may default. I love options like this, especially since they can increase a game's accessibility, allowing more people to have fun in their own way. Customer support. If I don't have to contact customer support on a cabinet, which I didn't have to on this machine, it automatically gets a Mr. Pickle here. Great job, Arcade1Up. Other annoyances beyond what I've already discussed? Just one, but not enough to take away a Mr. Pickle. There are screen flashes that happen when your ship takes damage playing Star Wars. This effect is found on commercial arcade machines, but does seem a bit more pronounced on the Arcade1Up machine. Now, the monitor technology is quite different between this home cabinet versus a commercial cabinet. Arcade1Up uses an LCD monitor versus the CRT monitor used on a commercial unit, so it makes sense. Not a huge deal, but just something to note. Is the cabinet fun? All the games here are the epitome of fun. As the late Stan Lee would say, "'Nuff said." Value for price. Now this is the quality of cabinet I expected when Arcade1Up first opened shop. When I bought my first Arcade1Up machine, I really did think it would approximate, in a smaller form factor, a worthwhile arcade experience given their touted real feel messaging. For those who watched my Atari Deluxe 12-in-1 review, know that Arcade1Up totally missed the mark with that machine. They presented a great concept, but with a total garbage execution. I afforded Arcade1Up that first stumble, chalking it up to growing pains when starting something new. But after their second failed attempt, with their Marvel Superheroes limited edition cabinet, and I guess their third attempt with me with one of their horrible countercades, they completely lost my trust at that point. But with the positive feedback from the community before their Star Wars cabinet release to the market, allowed me just enough confidence to give them another shot. Their last shot with me, in fact. And thankfully, they didn't squander it. Arcade1Up released this Star Wars cabinet at $499, their most expensive cabinet at the time, though it should be noted, when I first saw their Atari Deluxe 12-in-1 cabinet advertised, one retailer did list that one at $499 as well, though I got it at launch from Best Buy at $399. So Star Wars was the most expensive cabinet I purchased of any of theirs at the time. I've always said I would pay more for higher quality, and I put my money where my mouth is, hoping this to be the case. It was. It just goes to prove that fully utilizing amazing ingenuity and raising the price appropriately to allow for the necessary amount of quality paid off big time. $499 is a fantastic price for this machine. Getting it for less is a steal. Revealing the Mr. Pickle count for this cabinet is just a formality now. So, adding up the tally of all the categories, how many Mr. Pickles does Arcade1Up's Atari Star Wars get? 9 Mr. Pickles out of 10. Get it. Atari Star Wars is the greatest arcade game of all time, and Arcade1Up recreated the experience beautifully. There is some sad news though. As of the writing of this review, as far as I've been able to tell, Arcade1Up has stopped making this particular version of this machine, and its sit-down variant as well, which I've never tried out and have never owned. But if you can, however, get a new stand-up version by other means at that $499 price point, or a used one in great shape, Arcade1Up's first iteration of their stand-up Atari Star Wars is well worth your money. And there might be another silver lining for those who still want an Arcade1Up recreation. Arcade1Up released a new version of a stand-up SKU for Atari Star Wars. Now, I can't personally speak to the new cabinet quality, as I don't own one, nor have I tried it, but from the review videos I've watched, it sounds great, with the same yoke controller and games lineup as the version I have, just with some outer aesthetic changes, like the side art flowing into the riser and the inclusion of a faux light-up coin door. This new version retails for a bit more at $599, but if it has the same quality as the version I have, and I didn't already own Arcade1Up's Atari Star Wars, I could see myself relenting and paying the extra $100. The original Arcade1Up Atari Star Wars cabinet is just that damn good. Now I feel I must stress this, because it's very important. Please do not take my thoughts on the new version of Arcade1Up's Atari Star Wars cabinet as a review or endorsement. Again, I do not own this iteration, nor have I seen it in person. Please seek out reviews and thoughts from people who actually own this new version or have had extensive playtime on it in order to make an informed decision on whether to purchase. For those who would like to see more of what the cabinet I reviewed looks like, I'm paying it forward and leaving a link below to a video I've enjoyed showcasing it. And with that, safe travels everyone. And remember, you always have a right to your opinion, but only I have a right to mine. Until next time, stay wiggly, my friends.